Thank you, everyone. And could we please, if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to make a public comment, would you please come or pick up your green card and turn it into Rachel over here? But in the meantime, I have one from Mr. Schwetzel. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Schweckel. I live at 7501 Almerton, apartment 421, been there 11 years. Good morning. I'm a 76-year-old Eagle Scout and military vet. I have a college business degree. I was executive supervisor for a management consulting firm, George S. May International out of Park Ridge, Illinois, and a Milwaukee County Transit bus driver. I also paid my way in college with my bus service, taking students from Western Illinois University on weekends to 3 stops in the Chicago area. I chartered 1 to 4 interstate buses, cheaper than the Illinois Central Railroad, and guaranteed seat with pickup on campus. I don't drive anymore. I use PSTA buses to get to my VA health care, donate blood, and buy food. Eliminating the Route 59 and 18 bus stop at Beals or Bells, I don't know how we all pronounce it, store at Largo Mall is a hurtful imposition for those of us who don't walk well and have to take a bus to shop for groceries at a full food store, which is Publix. The remainder bus stop near Target in Largo Mall is a department store and far away from the Publix. The majority of bus riders don't follow details of transit stops like those of us here today. They just need convenient bus service. Please stop the hurtful elimination of the Beals or Bells bus stop at Largo Mall and allow me to answer any follow-up questions if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your comments. And if you would see Cassandra Borges, who's standing right there behind you, she will talk to you about that proposed subject matter. All right, Cassandra? Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. And before we begin our official actions this morning, I'd like to warmly welcome Councilor Keith Sabile from Pinellas Park, who is joining us on the PSTA board, replacing Councilor Patricia Johnson. Thank you very much for being here as well and volunteering to participate in this very important board for our county.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Would you like to say a few words?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so just in case someone hasn't told you, if during our meeting you wish to be recognized to speak, you tap that little light in the middle of your microphone and it'll let me know to recognize you and put your light on.
Yes, ma'am.
All right? Thank you so much. Okay, without further ado, we will move on to item 3, which is a presentation and from James Bradford. He's ready. So just over a week ago, our region hosted the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, or COMTO's National Conference at the Tampa Marriott Waterside over in Tampa. I attended along with Brad and a number of the staff and other elected officials from across our region. Brad spoke as part of a panel of our Tampa Bay transportation leaders, and I understand a number of our PSTA staff also spoke during the conference. PSTA's Chief Operating Officer, James Bradford, who did an outstanding job. Thank you for organizing us all while we were over there, James. Leading and organizing this great conference is introducing a short video to us about the event. Right, James?
Yes, ma'am, and good morning to you. Good morning to all of our board members and everyone here in the audience. And I just want to say, Madam Chair, Thank you so much for actually coming out and the support. It was really great seeing you there, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your support when we endeavor to take on these big projects and hopefully see them through. I do want to welcome Board Member Sabil to the board as well. This was fantastic. It was really great. This was a national conference that we brought to the Tampa Bay region. We received national recognition, we believe. Now, the COMPTO organization is a sibling conference and association to APTA, which is the American Public Transportation Association. COMPTO stands for Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. It is a multimodal association and conference. So, for example, we partnered locally, not just with HART, our sibling agency across the Bay, Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority, but also THIA, Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, and the Tampa International Airport, as well as Orlando Lynx. So it really was truly a partnership to represent the Tampa Bay area. We believe there were anywhere between 800 and 900 registrants at the conference from all over the country. COMPTO is made up of 35 chapters and over 3,000 members. So really good conference indeed, and without further ado, the video will explain a little bit more about the mission and kind of some of our accomplishments there.
There you go.
Oh, look.
Welcome to COMPTO 2019, the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials.
Hey everyone, welcome to COMPTO. This is the 2019 COMPTO National Transit Conference. We're here in Tampa Bay, here at the Tampa Waterside Marriott Hotel. COMPTO is a national transit advocate. It is all about inclusion, it's about diversity, it's about making sure that there's equal footing and equal opportunities at the top spots of leadership so that we represent and reflect the mosaic of the customers that we serve.
I really believe in what COMPTO is trying to do to encourage and develop a diverse workforce for our future. We live in a very diverse community, and our workforce serves that community, and I think it can best serve that community when it reflects that diversity. I'm really proud that James, our Chief Operating Officer, has played such a big role in bringing this conference together.
PSTA is proud to be a part of this. It was a long time in the making. We've been working behind the scenes for nearly 2 years to bring COMPTO to Tampa Bay, to Central Florida, and we're truly proud that it's here.
It's great to have a conference like this right here in our backyard, so I can bring lots of our young leaders to the conference to present on all of the different innovative things that PSTA is doing, and they can present to their colleagues and get really involved and meet people in the transportation industry.
We are here with locally elected officials from across the nation. We're here with state representatives, secretaries, CEOs from all over the country, and we've had an opportunity to sit on panels, to really sit up there and talk and boast about some of our amazing and trailblazing efforts so that we can show the rest of the country what we're doing and how we're leading the way. Thank you very much, and I would just like to give a shout out to PSA's own Bill Radke, who put the video together. He does such amazing work and really kind of capturing and summing up, the events. So his vision to be able to kind of translate that in a video is just amazing. And of course, thanking all of my PSTA colleagues and friends and staff and supporters who really came out to make this possible. With that, I conclude. I would take a few questions. I want to boast on the giant trophy that you see here. Leading up to the conference, that Saturday, a lot of these conferences have certain scholarship fundraising efforts and different events. On that particular Saturday, we hosted a youth symposium. So this had students from St. Petersburg and Tampa, where we had a full-day curriculum at the Florida Polytechnic University up there, right off of I-4. So I went with that group. We had a full day of inspiration, keynote speakers, career day building. Now, about an hour away from me, some of our other PSA staffers and Hillsborough County folks were competing at Saddlebrook Spa and Resort outside of Wesley Chapel, the beautiful Arnold Palmer Design Golf Course in our first annual scholarship golf fundraising effort. And so the trophy you see here today is Pinellas, I guess, besting Hillsborough in that round of golf that day. So, and actually, I'll have you, I think we have some of our members, Director Jeff Thompson, Alyssa Cossack, and Al Burns were also on that team making that possible. So we're very proud to at least have the cup, at least for a year, before we may have to give it up next year. So that's it. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And now we are on to 4A. Elizabeth Ogden, please come forward for the Transit Riders Advisory Committee report.
Good morning, Chairwoman Long, Mr. Miller, and esteemed board members. The TRAC met on July 16, 2019. I am pleased to report that TRAC unanimously approved the City of St. Petersburg to receive a TRAC Star, which stands for Superior Transit Access Recognition. This award is for their Complete Streets project along Dr. Martin Luther King Street. Bob Lasher, PSTA's External Affairs Officer, explained that in their effort to reduce excessive speeding and provide improved pedestrian access to the area, one travel lane was converted to 7-foot buffered bike lanes and 5 enhanced crosswalks with yellow warning lights, a medium refuge island, and wider ramps for people using mobile devices were added. Committee members all agreed that the project resulted in a safer environment for transit riders. PSTA and TRAC will present the award to the City of St. Petersburg at a future City Council meeting. TRAC also heard from Debbie Leos, Chief Financial Officer, who presented a summary of the draft fiscal year 2020 operating budget, which will be finalized next month and approved in September. Committee members were pleased to hear that over the course of fiscal year 19, each PSTA division took personal responsibility to work within or below original budgets without reducing much-needed service. Ms. Leos informed us that PSTA's focus in fiscal year 20 will be on continued collaboration and funding for the future. As always, your riders appreciate your focus on improving service frequency and reliability. The next TRAC meeting is August 20th, 4 p.m., and as always, board members are welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions, anybody? Anyone? Thank you so much for that very comprehensive report, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And now, Commissioner Eggers, are you ready to give the Forward Pinellas
Sure.
report?
Really had apparently a really good meeting on July 10th. I was not there, so they were very productive. Go figure.
How long did the meeting last?
So the meeting lasted till about 3:45, which is about 45 minutes shorter than the previous 2 meetings chaired by yours truly. So I think that was the point you were trying to make.
Thank you.
So in any event, we talked about several things. One, the Gateway Master Plan. Just to give you an update there, the board heard this draft recommendation, which was really a master plan for the Gateway area, which includes where we are now. An 18-month collaborative effort between Forward Pinellas, cities of Pinellas Park, Largo, St. Petersburg, and the FDOT. The master plan lays out action-oriented strategy, creating a series of distinctive places within the Gateway area that incorporate multimodal transportation, land use, and innovation, triple bottom line resilience, and sustainable infrastructure. There's a lot more detail to the plan, but I thought it was a really good plan. And there'll be working with those partners to kind of develop that action plan and how they're going to work together in the year, a couple of years ahead. Then we talked about some countywide plan standards adjustments. The board approved changes to the countywide plan to guide projected growth in the right places. The changes will include a revision to the land use strategy map to feature priority transit, housing, and workforce investment corridors, and incentives for increased density along those corridors. Produced a revised framework for adopting and amending activity center and multimodal corridor designations, and created a proposed strategy for priority corridor funding, linking land use and transportation decision-making and outcomes. Really another really robust discussion to try to accommodate those changes in increased job demands and population for our county. We also talked about the Advantage Pinellas Long-Range Plan, and different segments have been presented at the meetings during this year as it comes to its fruition and completion by the end of this calendar year. This time we talked about the Active Transportation Plan, which is the part of the plan that's dealing with the walking and bicycling aspects. Though we have a bronze medal for the activities that we do have, there's a lot of issues with regards to safety on pedestrian and bicycling around our county, so there's a lot of work to be done in that area. Just a final request for anybody who wants to fill out the MetroQuest survey. It's running, I think, through the end of the day today or tomorrow, but get on there at advantagepinellas.metroquest.com. And finally, we had the Board of County Commissioners had a discussion this past month, or I should say a couple weeks ago, and talked a little bit about kind of a combined effort between MPO and PSTA and the Board of County Commission on transportation and transit issues. So Forward Pinellas will be working closely with Pinellas County government and PSTA to reach out to municipalities and engage the numerous community groups to continue the discussion that we had last week. There were some changes and some additions that were offered up by the county commissioners, and some clarification on some North County issues that needed to be addressed. Witt, Barry, and Brad will be meeting with local governments, chambers, neighborhood groups, and other organizations to get their feedback and input on transportation funding approach outlined last week. So we kind of had a first look at it. We're going to go out and get some feedback from the public and then come back and have further discussion in October to talk about different transportation funding options to address the many needs that we have here with transportation and transit. So that's a brief update. Thank you.
You did that really well, Commissioner Eggers.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Now, do any of my colleagues here have any questions, thoughts, comments? That was a pretty important report that he just gave there. Nothing? Oh,
You're on.
wow. All right, so then we are on 4C, which is the T-BARTA report, and we met on July 26th, right here at PSTA, and while we had a lot of noteworthy things that we discussed, the most important was, you know, that we received $2.5 million from the Florida legislature this year for T-BARTA, and we needed to approve resolutions to accept that money. So there were two of them. One of them was $1.5 million for operations of T-BARTA, and the second one was $1 million that they appropriated in order for T-BARTA to study innovative and new technologies that are coming along down the pike that could be potential investments for our region to provide regional connectivity for our citizens. And so a couple of things that they mentioned in the proviso language was Hyperloop. I think you've all seen the presentation on Hyperloop. Another one was cable-propelled transit, which was something that the city of Clearwater was pursuing very aggressively about a year and a half or two ago. They didn't complete the prospective proposal, though, and so there are other pilot projects that they are trying to bring forward for our region. And the neat thing about that whole type of transit is it can be up and running in 18 months, from start to finish. And so I'm looking forward to getting some more details on that, and hopefully we'll be able to have a presentation on it here, Brad, so everyone can take advantage of the information. And you may have seen that I also surfaced the new technology that has developed over in Germany that is a big drone, and it has the ability to fly passengers around like an air taxi. So in conversation with Joe Lopano, the CEO over at Tampa International, he was telling me that you could take off from the rooftop of Tampa International and be in downtown St. Petersburg in 6 minutes. How exciting is that? 1 pilot and 4 passengers plus the luggage. So it's very innovative, it's very futuristic, but you know, it's those kind of things that make me very hopeful that we haven't, over the years, invested in very heavy diesel engines and track that is on a dedicated lane that you can't move around and adjust as the needs surface. And so this gives us an opportunity to take advantage of the latest and greatest. So stay tuned, because the future can be very, very bright for public transportation options. And who knows? You know, in the future, there may even be Airbuses. Just saying, you never know. You have to think big, right? Okay, so now we are on number 5, the consent agenda. Is there anything to pull from consent? Move approval. Thank you. Now we have a motion and a second. Please open the voting card. I think that's it, a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, everyone. Now we are on item 6, the FY 2020 trim notice approval. Debbie, come forward, please, with your magnificent numbers and math.
With your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to also say, before we move on to the trim notice, one of the items that was brought up at T-BARTA, which was so exciting, is T-BARTA is writing a letter of support for our Central Avenue BRT. So that was great news to hear from them, to move forward with the project. Now, down to the mundane, but this is an annual action item to approve the proposed millage rate. The rate, it will be submitted per state statute to the property appraiser for the trim notice. Our current rate is at .7500. Our maximum millage rate is .7500. And maintaining this current rate will result in a $3,881,050 increase in our proposed budget for fiscal '20 over what we forecast for fiscal '19. So the recommendation of the staff and the unanimous recommendation of the Planning Committee was the approval of the proposed rate of .7500 to be transmitted to the property appraiser. And I will open it up.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of trim notice.
Oh, please turn your mic on.
Sorry about that. I'd like to move approval of the 2020 trim notice at .7500.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the 2020 trim notice. Will you please open the voting card, Rachel? Thank you. And that is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, so now we're going to have a very important discussion regarding the PSTA Central Avenue Rapid Transit Project, the vehicle size, which, as you know, if you've been paying attention, has garnered a lot of interesting dialogue with some of our community partners. So I'll turn it over to Brad to continue the discussion. Please don't be shy. Okay, well, give me a minute, I didn't.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and introduce Abhishek. As the board knows, We try to make all of our decisions based on data and quantitative analysis. That's why we have a performance scorecard that you see on the wall in the back of the room. That's why we are in a benchmarking group. And I would venture, we're one of the only transit boards in the United States that knows the difference between NOx and particulate emissions on our different kinds of buses. That was supposed to be a joke.
Okay, everybody laugh.
As Commissioner Long said, over the last several months, we have changed our plans for the size of the vehicles for the Central Avenue Rapid Transit Project from 60-foot articulated buses to standard 40-foot buses as an attempt to compromise with the city of St. Pete Beach. The mayor of St. Petersburg wrote a letter favoring the larger vehicles, and we've had a number of discussions back and forth. So we decided to do what we always want to do and fall back on making a decision that's data-driven, based on the forecasted peak ridership for the BRT project. What's the highest number of riders on the vehicle at one time? Project Director Abhishek Dayal will now lead you through that data analysis and ask that you confirm the bus size recommendation this month in advance of an action next month to order the vehicles. Abhishek?
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Happy to be here again. Abhishek Dayal, Director of Project Management Office and the Central Avenue BRT Project Manager. So as Brad mentioned, we spent a lot of time reviewing the ridership analysis for this important project, but I always like to start off with this regional picture, just so the board understands it truly in the regional context what we're trying to achieve here. The Central Avenue Rapid Transit Project is really a critical piece of a bigger regional vision that we're planning to implement. And so the success of this project can be replicated elsewhere in our Tampa Bay region. So as far as the project is concerned, where we are approaching 60% final design. That is intended to be complete by next month. As far as the buses are concerned, we do have to order them by next month so that those can arrive by the time we start a revenue service later next year or early part of 2021. We did explore two options when it came to buses. One was using 60-foot buses, which was something we had started off with during design. And then the second option was a 40-foot bus. Both those options will include accommodations for up to 4 bikes inside those buses. So as far as the 60-foot bus, the reason why we included that in the original proposal was because our ridership demand overall did support that decision. And there was a desire to include bike storage inside the buses, so a 60-foot bus can very well accommodate those bikes. And then also, as you see from projects across the nation, all the BRT projects, most of them do use 60-foot buses and really provides that distinction from the other services that other communities offer. So as you look at this general layout of a 60-foot bus, you can see there are about 42 to 49 seats on a 60-foot bus. And the range is due to the fact that there may be wheelchairs present inside the buses. So if there are wheelchairs present, you reduce the number of seats down to 42. If there are no wheelchairs present, then you can utilize that space and you would get a total of 49 seats on a 60-foot bus. Similarly, for a 40-foot bus, you can see the layout here. The reason why a 40-foot bus is being considered right now, as Brad mentioned, we had some conversations with St. Pete Beach Commission, who had expressed some concerns about using 60-foot buses. We had even included the 40-foot bus proposal in the initial negotiations with the St. Pete Beach Commission. Unfortunately, that agreement never materialized, but that's something that's still being looked at from the project side. But the important thing is this 40-foot bus also has the ability to accommodate up to 4 bikes inside the buses. And as you look at the layout for a typical 40-foot bus, The seating capacity is between 23 and 31. Again, the lower end of the number is based on wheelchairs present, and if there are no wheelchairs present, then you can accommodate up to 31 passengers all seated. So as Brad mentioned, we are looking to make a data-driven decision, and that way we do want to make sure that when it's time to order those buses, they can arrive in time for our start in later part of next year or early part of 2021. The ridership analysis that we did was really looking at the peak ridership loads, which really means how many people are going to be present inside the bus, how long will they be on the bus, how many people will be standing, and how often does that peak ridership happen on this system. So to arrive at that answer, we looked at Federal Transit Administration's approved ridership model to really understand what the daily ridership would be. And then we compared that with our existing Central Avenue trolley service by time of day, by direction, between stops, what's the average loads on our Central Avenue trolley, and then applied those factors onto our ridership model for the BRT project. So what we found was that during the peak hours, both AM and PM, we can expect somewhere between 31 to 36 passengers on the bus for about 1 to 2 miles. For the remaining portion or the remaining time when the BRT is in operation, we anticipate about approximately 24 passengers or less on more than 80% of all the bus trips. And this is during the off-peak hours. So if you compare the two bus types, the 40-foot and the 60-foot bus, as I mentioned, with no wheelchairs present, you can get 31 seats on a 40-foot bus and 49 seats on a 60-foot bus. And if you make room for some standees, which is approximately 50% of the number of seats on a bus, you can add another 15 passengers on a 40-foot bus, or 25 passengers on a 60-foot bus. So giving you a total capacity of 46 on a 40-foot bus and 74 on a 60-foot bus. So the maximum, comparing that with the maximum passenger load that I had talked about in the previous slide, both those buses can accommodate the 36, which is the absolute maximum peak load on either of those buses. And you can see the cost differential to PSTA between the 40-foot bus and the 60-foot bus. We did have a good discussion at the planning committee, and they did unanimously approved a 40-foot bus going forward, given the peak loads that we are anticipating. As far as next steps, we do anticipate ordering these vehicles by next month, so this will be an item for action in front of this board next month. We will continue on the project design, which we hope to complete by later this year, and then also continue our coordination with Federal Transit Administration and other project partners, including all our communities that the project is going through. And of course, community outreach continues as we develop our design for this project. So speaking of Federal Transit Administration, last week, PSTA actually hosted staff from FTA headquarters and their project management oversight contractors, and this was upstairs in the auditorium for a 2-day risk workshop. So staff from FTA and PMOC actually came out here to really explore the corridor. We gave them a tour of the corridor, and they were really appreciative of the tour and all the information we provided as part of their assessment of this project. Now, this risk workshop is a requirement for any project seeking small starts and new starts funding, so it was an important step for us, for the project team, to make sure that FTA understands the project details better and then on-the-ground experience as well. So we were really happy to host them, and so we do anticipate some recommendations from FTA in the next coming weeks as we explore the grant agreement. So coming back to the recommendation, staff is recommending moving forward with 40-foot buses to support the rapid transit project. And with that, I think I'm going to have Commissioner Gerard talk about the planning committee.
Commissioner Gerard?
Yes,
You're going to talk about the planning
planning
committee discussion.
committee had the, well, yes, we had the presentation, we decided 40-foot buses were appropriate. Yes, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Just one question that I think I asked at the committee about the bike space. Is there any way to use the sign on the front of the bus that, sometimes says, "Have a nice day," to say no bike space or something like that when there isn't, so that you could wave the bus off if you couldn't, am I making sense?
That's something we can definitely explore and see if there are technologies that could tie the sensor on the bike storage inside the bus to the outside sign and see. We also talked about maybe having that information displayed in the passenger information systems at the stations,
That would be really
so
great.
that information could be provided in advance of the bus approaching. So that's something we're looking at for sure.
4 bikes sounds like a lot, but I bet it would fill up pretty quick.
So are there, Commissioner Cox, please, okay, there you go, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek. In our planning committee, it was discussed, Commissioner Schulman, the concern about, with the city of St. Petersburg being the major a major stakeholder here. Did we have any discussion between that meeting and now with the city about
We did.
what we're
Yeah.
doing? What's that result?
We did have a discussion, as the planning committee did ask us to have some discussions with the city. So I presented this to the staff and actually to Commissioner Rice last week, or I'm forgetting, yeah, I think it was last week. And Evan Morey, Director of Transportation for the city, spoke with the mayor about it. The mayor had, after he wrote the letter in support of to the city of St. Pete Beach, asking for the larger vehicles, he sort of walked that back a little bit with a follow-up email to the mayor of St. Pete Beach about a month ago. So my understanding is the mayor is understanding and is supportive of the idea of starting with the 40-foot buses.
Did you have further questions?
Yeah, I did, or I do, anyway. Oh, and Abhishek, I'm going to understand this as well. There'll be 9 buses, that is correct. And if the decision were made to go to the articulating buses, the 60-foot buses, the cost would be $2 million additional. And that would that be like $220,000 per bus? Is that how it would work out?
So Commissioner Cox, the cost to PSTA would be $2 million. The FTA will be, contributing additional funds towards the 60-foot bus.
And that would still be for the 9 articulating buses?
It would be for the 9 articulated
Thank
buses.
you, that's all I have.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah. And that was kind of the question that I was going to ask, and I'm still not sure I understand the answer. So we're buying 9 new buses. The total cost of each bus is how much? The 40-foot ones?
So the 40-foot bus, the total cost all in, and we're still negotiating on the actual price of the bus, which we'll present that next month. So what we have estimated in our project cost is about $850,000 per bus.
And to the question that was asked, each bus would be an additional $200,000, or roughly $226,000 if it was a 60-foot bus.
So approximately, you would have to add another $250,000 to $300,000, depending on the amenities that you add to a 60-foot bus.
Okay, thank you.
And I thought I saw another light down here. Commissioner Bennett?
Yes, I just had a couple questions. The first one, I guess, Vince already asked, and I didn't know how many buses were included, 9 new buses. There's no way that our reduction of maybe routes, we could get a 40-foot bus from another route and use a 40-foot bus and not buy a brand-new bus?
That's certainly something we can do, but please note that the 40-foot buses that we're purchasing for the BRT, that is customized for the project. So in the sense that, as I mentioned, the bike storage, there will be bike storage inside the bus, not outside the BRT buses, as opposed to what our current fleet has, which has bike storage, bike racks outside the buses. So it would be slightly different from the rest of our fleet.
It just seems like we're spending $6 to $8 million on new buses, and maybe there's some way we could reduce that cost by finding a bus that's currently in the system. I know we retire buses periodically, and that's not possible.
Based on the amenities, no. We would have to, but on the other hand, you could repurpose BRT buses and be used elsewhere in for our local system.
Well, my thoughts were we might repurpose a current bus for that route and then buy a new bus for our system that might be a 60-foot electric bus instead of purchasing the 40-foot buses for that route. How are these buses going to be powered?
These are all intended to be hybrid electric.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One
Yeah.
more question.
Okay.
Okay, and I've ridden BRT, and you can board in the middle, and that's how a bicyclist would board, and it's kind of rapid. It's not like putting that rack down, so on and so forth. But the fare, how will the fare be paid? Because typically it's in the front of the bus now for those boarding, and if those folks are boarding in the middle and then either being seated or, putting their bus down, so on and so forth. Have we developed that yet?
So we're actually in conversations just about that on fare validation and fare collection. We do have, in partnership with HART, the Flamingo Fare program that we're in the process of developing, and we want to leverage that project as part of this BRT project, so it provides for seamless boarding and alighting from the service. So that's something that we are exploring on the BRT project.
So the BRT buses are developed in a way that coming on and getting off is more rapid than typically the method we have.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Driscoll, you want to hit your button, please? Okay?
Thank you. The capacities that you talked about with the 40-foot buses included numbers without wheelchairs. But then on the diagram, on the layout of the bus, it shows that there's room for 2 wheelchairs.
That's correct.
On the bus. And is that consistent with ridership numbers of, considering the number of passengers who use wheelchairs?
Unfortunately, the ridership model is not very granular in the sense that it's not able to predict how many wheelchair passengers we might be able to get. But generally, and this is system-wide, in fact, all the BRT projects typically have room for 2 wheelchairs. So that's what we have made accommodations for in this project as well.
Okay. And if we discover that there is a higher demand for space for wheelchairs on the buses, can that be accommodated? Are we able to expand the number of wheelchairs that can be on the bus at the same time?
We can certainly work with our manufacturers to make more accommodations for wheelchairs, certainly.
Okay. And then regarding the bike storage, if we find that there is a higher demand for bikes, if we have 4 bike storage spots, but we're consistently seeing that people are using bikes. I mean, this is part of our, larger effort to make it easier for people to get from point A to point B without using a car. and we're encouraging more bike use. You can see with our Complete Streets plan in St. Petersburg, how we are, making a great effort in that regard. So we're expecting to see more people using a bike as at least part of their transportation. So if that demand goes up, would it be possible to outfit these buses so that we can have bike storage on the outside like we do with our other buses, as well as the 4 spots inside?
So I think the way I would answer this is we would have to look at how many bikes we are anticipating
Yes.
on the service, and then look at what other systems are also doing. Because I know at least of 2 systems that do experience higher than usual bike user demand, and how they address those situations when there is a higher than usual bike demand, and how they address those. In some systems, I'm not saying that that's something we would do here, they allow bike users to bring their bikes, but stand with their bikes inside the bus. And some will have, and some systems also have peak bike-only buses that they run, so that people with bikes can, it just adds more capacity for people with bikes during those times. So those are things that we want to explore some more and see how other systems are handling those. It's not a unique solution, it's not a unique issue here, but I'm sure there are other systems that we can learn from and see how they address that
Right.
situation.
So it sounds like we can be nimble and adjust our offerings to meet the needs of different types of riders.
Absolutely, and that's what the beauty is about Bus Rapid Transit project, that you can adjust based on your own unique ridership profile.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggers.
Just one more question. Just for the record, did we have specifications that we provided or the FTA provided on the type of bus that we're using? In other words, did they require a certain type? Was electric considered? Was diesel considered? Was the one we're looking at, hybrid electric, considered? And do we have any restrictions from FTA on that? And what were the cost differences, if we did look at them?
There are actually no restrictions from FTA on what type of buses you can or cannot purchase for your project. From around the system, from different parts of the country that we've seen, we've seen both types of buses being used, whether it's a 40-foot or a 60-foot, whether it's diesel or electric or hybrid electric, so there are no specific requirements as part of this project.
And we looked simply at hybrid electric.
We looked at hybrid electric as the
So there
preferred.
was no cost done on either of the other 2?
For the diesel, we have not, and then the electric one, we currently have a fleet of 2 that we are looking to see how that performs, and that's being deployed on our looper, downtown looper. So we thought that for this project, hybrid electric might be the best propulsion type for this project.
Thank you.
Again?
Yeah, well, stuff keeps coming in my head. And,
Okay. Go ahead.
The reason that we're not going with the 60-foot articulating bus is because we can't come to an agreement with the city of St. Pete Beach, is that correct? Is that our sole reason for doing that?
Okay, hold on with that question, please, for just a moment, if you don't mind, because it really parallels right into my list of concerns and questions. Number one, it is a bit disappointing that in your slides, Abhishek, you did not start with the 30-foot bus when clearly, when I was down in St. Pete Beach, that was the very least that they would accept. Anything over that made them go just off the reservation in terms of being able to accept buses down in their city. So for me personally, I would like to see the comparisons with the 30-foot buses, number one. Number two, I don't know why we are so easily moving toward hybrid when we have started down the path of buying electric buses and having just been at the EV Driving on Sunshine launch a couple of days ago. I would be very interested in the opportunity to access some of the $166 million available through the Volkswagen settlement that is available, my understanding is, for electric buses, and why can't we get some of that money to use for this project? I think that would be a win-win. We know, and I saw this on a slide at the minority conference over in Tampa, that the largest impact to our carbon footprint is public buses on our roadways. So given that we've been such good stewards currently, why wouldn't we continue down that path? And then, yeah, I think I hit everything. So I'll just let you go ahead and address my thoughts, because clearly in every city I've ever been in that has public transportation, and a lot of it, it is almost customary to see buses go by with people standing. And to me, that's how you drive and change the culture, is when people see that the buses are just packed, then that's an opportunity for us to expand our system, and people will accept that. The comment, and you've all heard them, board members, is that I don't know why we have to have all these routes because the buses are always empty. So why don't we focus on a bus that we know will be full? Okay, that's the end of my rant for now. But I just would like to see the difference, what it would save us maybe, because surely a 30-foot bus is not going to be the same amount of money as a 40 or a 60-foot bus. And so I just think that before we make the decision, it would be nice to know that information. Okay, Commissioner Barkley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just turned it off, okay, there we go, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur wholeheartedly with the electric bus option as important. And also, let's keep in mind that buses are purchased with grants. We provide the operating expenses. So the idea of returning to out-of-date diesel-driven buses is not necessarily to our benefit. It's a more costly method of fuel, and the purchase price is not a factor that's totally relevant in terms of how we acquire buses.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Driscoll?
Thank you.
Oh. Well, you were on and you turned yourself off. There you go.
Oh, am I on?
Yes,
Thanks.
you are.
Based on the ridership numbers that were presented for the peak loads, we already have 31 to 36 people that would be on it for 1 to 2 miles. The 40-foot bus has 31 seats. So even at current peak times, that bus will be full. We are anticipating, and actually we're expecting, that ridership will go up significantly for the BRT. And so if we're already at capacity with this on a 40-foot bus during peak hours, I think we're already going to get that full bus look and those great, that great result and that attractiveness. But it's not going to be attractive if we don't have enough room for everyone, or if we don't have enough room to grow from the beginning. So I'm hesitant. I like your idea about making sure that the buses are full. But I don't want us to be too small right off the bat. And it looks like the 40-foot bus is the right size for now. That would leave 5 people standing during peak hours, capacity to 15, so we'd have more people standing. If anything, I'd like to stick with the 40s and add buses and perhaps increase frequency
Well,
to accommodate those higher numbers. And so just something to think about. And regarding the electric, I do agree that we should be moving toward that. And I would be very interested to see the difference in the cost and what those numbers look like with hybrid versus electric. If there is any way at all that we can go electric with these. I want us to make that happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Driscoll. Your comments are duly noted. That said, I also am trying to be sensitive to and respectful of our partnership with our municipal partners, and I know that the 40-foot bus is not acceptable to the people in a couple of our cities. So I'm interested now in hearing what Commissioner Gerard has to say on the subject matter.
Well, I agree with most of what you said. Well, some of what you said, actually. I agree that we need 30-foot or 40-foot buses because I can tell you that the empty bus is a myth. You know, there are parts of routes that are empty or have 1 or 2 people on them, but there are many times when there were a lot of people on the bus. You don't hear about those, but it happens. And as you said, we're hoping to build this ridership. And I also, for some reason, I was assuming that these were electric because that's what we've been buying. And this is a new project, so I take back my approval on the planning committee. I would really like us to look, and I know it's late in the process, but I really want us to look at electric.
If I may, just wanted to make one comment on the electric buses. So electric buses comes with its own infrastructure also that we have to design for, which is the electric charging stations. And those have to be placed in a way so that, every time the bus needs a charge, there's an electric charging station along the route, which we did not design for as part of this design phase. I think we had always assumed that there would be a hybrid electric bus propulsion option that we would then design for. So that adds a fairly significant amount of scope that we would need to include as part of the
Abhishek,
design.
are you kidding me? With all the focus that we have put on electric buses and reducing our carbon footprint, this wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind?
No.
Brad? Yes, you can. Thank you.
Let me just clarify. It has been an intense analysis. We have looked at electric vehicles. We have proposed electric vehicles for this project from day one. We looked at the idea of even having an electric wire like old trolleys all along. I'm sure that would have been really appreciated by some of our member cities. The issue is that electric vehicles, where they stand today, it's too much of a risk. This service is too long, and the number of miles that these vehicles will operate today, the span, regardless of the expense of going to an electric vehicle, the range that our current electric vehicles have and that available today would not be sufficient to handle the operation of this service. We can look at it, and if you'd like to delay the project by a year or two until the technology gets to where we need to go, we can look at that. But the hybrid electric vehicle, which now has the capacity with the new technology that we have on the vehicle to be all electric in certain areas of the route, it is the available technology that's there today. That is what we have bought for our fleet. We are we are expanding our electric vehicle fleet. We are gonna have 6, which is the most anyone has in Florida. But right now, on this route particularly, just because of how long it is, hybrid electric is the best technology that we came up with lots of analysis on the electric versus hybrid versus diesel options.
Okay, so let me clarify what I think I heard you say. And I'm very disappointed that we don't have the numbers, because I would really have liked to have seen them. That said, did you say that given that we move forward with what's been proposed, that we do have the ability in a year or two or whenever to transition to fully electric?
Yes, I think that will happen.
You're sure?
I am sure. Well, I'm not sure. There might be photon buses or something that is invented in the future, but.
I'm just saying, with what you know today, we go forward with this hybrid proposal, there is an opportunity to transition to fully electric as we know the world today.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Gerard.
I just have one more question. Okay, but, so what, this is kind of a sidestep too, but what is going on with the Volkswagen settlement? Is that
The
something
dollars
that
are coming from the feds down to the state, and the state will determine how those dollars can be utilized. And currently, and I just had my legislative meeting yesterday with our folks, as it stands today, can only be used for buses. So I quickly said, well, I don't think the legislature should be telling the transit folks what kind of or the local governments, what kind of vehicles it should be used for, because we have a huge fleet in Pinellas County, and it's not all buses, but if you look at all our municipalities, I mean, my goodness, think of how many vehicles we could transition to if we could use that money for our regular county vehicles, city vehicles. So we'll see.
Specifically.
But right now, it's just for buses.
Well, specifically,
PSTA.
Chair Long is correct that the money has flowed 154 million, I believe, or something around that.
166.
To Florida. A report was drafted by the state of Florida and published last week that listed the priorities for how to spend the money, that is now through some kind of 15 or 60-day review period or something? A month-long review period. At the Electrical Vehicle Symposium on Monday, talking to some of the environmentalists who are watching this very carefully, they were concerned that the categories, while it did, as Commissioner Gerard did, prioritize bus replacement for the VW settlement funding, that it opened up the opportunity that the bus replacements could be diesel. Could be diesel, CNG, all kinds of buses. Not necessarily transit buses, school buses, et cetera. So they said that they were concerned, that's what they told me. But we're certainly gonna be an applicant for funding for 100% electric transit buses to replace our oldest diesel buses. And we think that'll be a competitive application, but we'll just have to keep track of it. It's not expected to be, funding is not expected to be awarded for some time. And I was told on Monday that Florida is in last place as far as the speed in which they're allocating these funds. All 49 other states have already allocated funds, but we're behind the 8 ball a little bit on it. But that's the latest on it.
Well, okay.
So again, this recommendation here today and what the planning committee voted on 2 weeks ago was just recommending us move forward and present to you next month with the 40-foot buses rather than the 60-foot buses. And we've provided the ridership justification for that. To answer Commissioner Cox's earlier question, the reason, with this vote, the reason will no longer just be some sort of negotiation that never came to fruition with St. Pete Beach, but because the ridership justifies purchasing this size of vehicle. And I think that's a good position for the PSBA to be in, that we can defend our decision.
Anyone else? Anybody? Then are we in a posture to vote on this issue? Members? Hello.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please open the voting
The
card.
motion is for to purchase 40-foot.
Correct.
That's not, I'm asking what the motion was. 40-foot versus 60-foot buses.
Correct.
Okay, well, I want to make sure, because we're not
Like a
talking
policy.
about hybrid versus electric
No,
versus
but that's what
diesel.
that's their proposal, so.
I understand.
Are we all clear? Well, for some reason, my computer decided to go, oh, good. It won't wake up. Okay, we're good.
Okay, good. Phew, awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Sorry for the grilling. The what? We just answered that. Okay. Bob,
Ma'am. All right.
the October service changes, did we answer the gentleman's question about Largo Mall?
Yes, sure,
Excellent.
because spoke with Cassandra.
And the answer was,
I don't know,
oh.
but
Is she
I can
here?
tell you it's probably the best answer he will get.
What-
Not just because she's my supervisor and chief development officer.
Cassandra, do you have an answer for us on this question, just quickly?
Yes, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
We did talk to the gentleman who is concerned about the changes to the service within the mall. Remember, this is private property, and we have had a number of incidents at the stops that we are suggesting to be removed. And so we are changing the way that we circulate around the mall. There is still access to the shopping. There are still stops within the mall itself. And so we did talk to him about the complaints that we've gotten from other folks for this area. So the scheduling department will continue to look at how we circulate in the mall, but do understand that this is private property.
Thank you. Continue, Bob.
All right, thank you. I'm going to talk about a proposal for some upcoming service changes, and I'll give you some background. One thing that I can never say enough is that PSTA is one of the most efficient transit systems in the entire country, based on our participation in our benchmarking group. We get more per dollar than just about anyone else out there. Part of that is how we are constantly evaluating our routes and looking to make changes 3 times a year, February, October, and in June. And that also involves not just our analyzing what's going on, but our working with our riders. And when people come to us and say, can you do something, we take a good look at it. And what we're going to take you through in this first part of the service change is really rider-generated, probably one of the most rider-generated service changes I've seen in about 15 years here. Back in 2012, we put in a new service called Connector Service. We had 3 routes up in the northern part of the county, and the idea was that we'd build some extra time into the route and then allow each route to flex 3/4 of a mile off of its scheduled route to pick people up and drop them off. And we would do 2 deviations per run. And it was something new, it was innovative, we wanted to see how it would work. What we didn't anticipate, thank you Pinellas County, was how long some of these 3/4 of a mile deviations would take. 20 to 30 minutes each. Now, when you have a route running once an hour and you're throwing in a deviation or two that can be 20 to 30 minutes, we can't keep it on a regular schedule. And we've gotten comments from our riders for a while now that they would ride it, and this is what we heard at our public hearing, except for the fact it's not reliable enough. They can't use it for work or school because if a deviation is thrown in there, they can't count on it. So they have asked us to make these routes a regular fixed routes, and that is what we're proposing to go to.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
clarification. You just said, I think, that every time they go on a 3/4 mile deviation, every deviation, in other words, somebody's made an appointment, they go 3/4 of a mile to pick that person up and get back to the route, it takes a half an hour?
It can take, not every time, no. And it's up to 3/4 of a mile, so they can be shorter, the deviations, but we have seen them regularly as long as 20 to 30 minutes.
What are they doing between the main route and 3/4 of a mile off that route?
It can depend on the number of streetlights involved, left turns. If they're picking up someone in a wheelchair, it can also take extra time. There are a lot of factors.
Yeah, okay, all right.
But I assure you, nobody is going to be stranded. We have service, this options for everybody. So what we want to do is to just make these regular fixed route, and they will also have some name changes. Sorry, the screen's just going a little crazy on me here. Because we're not going to call them connectors anymore. The connectors is part of the flex service, so they will be going by what we use as their internal numbers, the route 812, 813, and 814, and we will be putting out regular bus stops along the way. And I'll take you through, this is the Countryside Oldsmar Tampa connector, and the gray area you see, that's the current flex area of that route. And then you can see the purple line, that is the fixed route, and we're pretty much going to go to that. Now, we are also adjusting these routes slightly based on where we've been picking up and dropping people off with the deviations throughout the years. So for this route, which will become the 812, we'll move it off of Belcher and move it onto Countryside Boulevard because we've been getting so many deviations on Countryside. And if you look at the ridership, you can see we average about 65 riders a day, and 10 of those, about 6 are the deviations. So once we make this change, and we will also, as I mentioned, be putting in the standard bus stops, except over in Hillsborough Avenue where we will just serve the hard stops. For the Dunedin Palm Harbor connector, again, you see the gray area, that's where it's going to be deviating. Purple is the fixed route. That's what we are going to try to stick to with some modifications. Right now, it's about 36 riders a day, and about a third are deviations. In the red boxes, that's where we're going to be making the change. We're going to be pulling it off of alternate 19 to MLK in downtown Dunedin because that's where we're getting a lot of the flexing, both directions. Same up in the North County. Instead of going Nebraska to US 19, we're going to continue on County Road 1 and then come over to Alderman where the route terminates, and that's at the Walmart on 19. And here's some of the comments we've been getting. They tell us it doesn't run regularly enough. They would like to use it for work, for commuting in schools, but they cannot rely on it. They would definitely use it more, the riders who aren't using it, if we could keep it more on schedule. And the people who came out to oppose this said, well, we like the connector service because we can call the same day up to 2 hours in advance and get a ride. They can pick us up at my house, which is more convenient than DART, because standard DART, you have to call 24 hours in advance. We now have our new Mobility on Demand program, which is basically a same-day DART. So we've transitioned those people already, and they were pretty happy about it, because now that convenience they were looking for out of the connector, they already have. And anybody who can't get to a connector route, I mean, if they're 3/4 of a mile away, automatically will qualify for DART. So they can get their ride to wherever they need to go, be picked up at their house, dropped off wherever they need be. And we're also looking at expanding our Direct Connect program with some more stops to help service these routes as well. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm looking at this page again, and it says adding 20 to 30 minutes per run. So the deviations themselves aren't taking 30 minutes, but the length of the entire run could be added, we could be adding 20 to 30 minutes. Is that what I'm seeing? Under proposed changes, it talks the length of the time of the deviations, some adding 20 to 30 minutes per run.
Yeah.
So that's
total for the entire run.
Yeah, actually, and you know what? I misstated that because it's per deviation, not per run. I'm sorry, that was my mistake in here.
So, and you're allowing 2 deviations per run,
Right now, yes.
so that's an hour delay.
If they're both that long, yes.
Okay.
If it take, and some are shorter. Some are definitely take longer depending upon where they have to go. One last thing is even the people that we met with who liked the convenience and came out and said, we don't really want it to change, even they admitted there's an issue with the reliability. We need to do something. They want us to get it on time better. So those are the primary parts of the service change coming up, and it also concerns the Safety Harbor Connector, which will become the 814. But right now, the Safety Harbor Connector averages 0 deviations per day, so I didn't bother to put it up there because it's really not going to have a major impact. Then we do have part of our service changes. We go through, we change schedules here and there to make sure they better reflect the runtime of the route. We work with our drivers and union on that, and then some bus stop optimizations as well, making sure we have them where we need them, or if we can combine some, we can. And the other thing we'll be coming back to you is pending a new trolley agreement with the city of St. Pete Beach, because they are not members of PSTA. Most of you know this, they pay for hourly service, and they have asked us to remove the Central Avenue trolley from Paso Grill. So this will be part of the new negotiation, the new contract we put together with St. Pete Beach, and our staff and theirs have been in agreement with what we would do. Right now, it's looking like we're going to turn it around at the county park, the beach access park, which is Dolphin Village.
So, Bob, we have stopped the buses on Paso Grill, correct?
No, they're still running. Are they still, yeah. We told them by October we'd be out.
Okay.
They're working
That-
on launching a replacement micro-transit option instead.
And yeah, they've brought in a consultant to start looking at how they can put together some sort of whether it's a golf cart or van or something smaller to move people back and forth in that part. But we don't have much detail on that.
Okay,
It is not our preference.
I know. It'll be
And-
interesting how the businesses on Paso Grill like that, but,
Yeah.
oh well.
Yes, I've met with a lot of the people who ride and the employees all along St. Pete Beach, and they want the service, and they do use it.
Well, are they talking to their, well,
I've asked them.
we are sure that we are sending the message that this is not the desire of PSTA, correct?
Absolutely.
Correct.
Thank you.
And our riders, our CSRs, drivers, they're all going to know it.
Okay,
So there'll be a lot of outreach for this, because it's a pretty big change.
right. Vince?
Yeah, I have a deep concern about eliminating 2.5 miles of service on St. Pete Beach, and I know it's been contentious, and I just hate to see riders suffer. There could be folks that work down towards Paso Grill that necessarily they need the bus, and I just hope and wish and pray that we can continue service all the way down the beach. That's,
Have you been to the St. Pete Beach City Council meeting?
I went once. And
Okay.
I truly understand the dilemma.
It's a dilemma.
But I don't believe, do they own the roads?
No. Okay, Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, this is probably, we're talking about some additional changes here, and so I have another issue, maybe I'll bring it up in my comments, about the model that we're using for trolley services and the purchase that we have this year of additional trolleys, and how that relates to our contract with the Jolly Trolley, and why we wouldn't potentially allow more private purchases of additional trolleys and letting them expand their area of service. Probably not for this discussion, but we're talking about service, trolley service on St. Pete Beach, and I just want to make sure that
nobody here lets me forget that when we get to the end of the meeting, because I do think it's something that I'd like to hear more about, so, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else on this issue?
Now, we did bring this to the planning committee, and they did approve to move forward and approve this, so we'll need.
Commissioner Gracie?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank you, Bob, for coming to Dunedin City Hall. We had a few heads there, and we did, we had some very good comments and feedback from, from residents in the North County position, and you were there to answer the questions, and I'll follow up with that group. We're also taking this to our Disability Advisory
Yes.
as soon as this is done, so I look forward to moving that information.
It was a pleasure
Again,
being
thank
there. I know the Disability Advisory Group will be eager to hear about our new Mobility on Demand
The
program.
emails are waiting, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gracie, how
Yes.
many folks were at the meeting?
I want to say we had 10?
Yeah, about that total.
Nice to see them being engaged.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Just one, on that point, thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Gracie. Have we had a chance to talk to any group? Have we had an opportunity to talk to any groups up in the Palm Harbor area for the changes that we're anticipating up there?
We've put it out on the buses, the terminals we've been talking about. I had the public hearing, but we haven't been going out to specific groups, though we did meet with a representative from, can you help me with that, Disability Council, is that, who showed up and we spoke with him. He came to the public hearing, and we had a good talk with him, because he was not aware yet of the Mobility on Demand, which is going to make a big difference.
Well, I think the point is that, again, I think the city of Dunedin asked for you to come and address that issue, I'm assuming, at a city council meeting, right? Or was it a workshop? Where was it?
I think it might have been staff.
Okay.
In any event, it bubbled and you were there.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's important. I'm just saying, there might be bubbling going up in Palm Harbor that we need to reach out to and make
Yes.
sure we're a little more proactive than just putting signs up on
Oh,
buses.
yes.
Let's make sure that they understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, once-
And get their feedback as well.
Absolutely. Once the decision is made, then we've got a big outreach plan. We're not only on buses, but we want to make sure that as many people know about this as possible on all of the routes. And it's a heavy lift, but we're used to it.
Well, I'll be curious to see what feedback you get.
Yes.
After we've made this decision. So-
Well, and we take it very seriously. That's how we got, that feedback from our riders is how we got to where we are now. So we definitely want that feedback. We want to know how it's working.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we need a motion now to approve this service change. May I have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Please open the voting card. All right. And now, one of our favorite parts. Who are you missing?
I'm sorry, we have an abstain.
Who abstained?
Do you have a, do you have a conflict of interest in voting on the item?
No, ma'am, I just don't feel that I have enough information to to vote on that item.
Then you have to vote no.
Yes.
Okay.
You still have to vote one way or another.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay,
Thank you.
motion passes with 2 opponents. All right, now we are in our financial audits and related services. Al Burns and Debbie Leos. I guess Debbie is going to open a conversation.
Yes, thank you. This action item is to increase the contract value with Clifton Larson Allen, better known as CLA, our auditors. And back in 2015, we awarded a contract not only for audit services to CLA, but for related services as well. And that was the first time PSTA has actually had a contract that allowed for additional services. So what we did is CLA, unlike some of our previous auditors, is a national firm, and they offer a lot of consulting services, financial services. And we have taken advantage of that. We have done things such as using CLA to review our telecom contracts and to renegotiate them. And we found that we not only saved what they cost us, but we had a payback period of about a month and a half with continuing savings going forward. We use them for other things like, well, what I call IT penetration testing, both internal and external. I'm sure all of you have somewhere along life's way gotten what we call phishing emails. So from an internal aspect, we want to see, will our employees actually open one of those, which can create a lot of issues. From an external standpoint, we want to see, can anybody get into our systems? We have also used CLA for such things as getting our grant files, procurement files ready for triennial when we were going through a transition period with directors. And as a result of some of these additional services that we've had, we're now getting to the point where we're reaching the maximum of the contract that was approved back in 2015. We also want to make sure that we have enough funds for our fiscal 19 audit that's coming up, as well as continuing the work that CLA is doing on our paratransit assessment that'll be for greater efficiencies in paratransit, as well as data analysis programs they're writing for us that'll also create a lot of efficiencies and take away human errors in reviewing things. So today, we would like to move forward with the board's approval to increase the value of the contract by $150,000 to a total contract value of $509,000. And that will give us the flexibility not only to complete what we've started, but give us additional room for additional IT testing, as well as any other services that may come up during this last year of their contract. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Barkley.
Yes, Madam Chair, just a note from the Finance Committee meeting last week. I was not present at that meeting, but our Vice Chair for the Finance Committee, Josh Schulman, was there and presided over the meeting. And at that meeting, the committee reviewed and discussed in detail and approved unanimously the action item for financial audits and related services for Clifton Larson Allen, who are our auditors. This action increases the contract by $150,000 due to spending contract award funds on additional services billed at an hourly rate, and the original contract amount therefore needs to be increased. This includes funding for other additional services, as Ms. Leos pointed out, as well as regular audit tasks. This is the last option year on the contract.
Okay. Commissioner Gerard?
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit concerned that we went ahead and overspent, or almost overspent this contract over the last 4 years, and we're asking for quite an increase. And I guess we knew we were doing that and we were going to come.
It's when you get towards the end of the contract is when you'll be coming back to do that. And we have used them way more than we ever had anticipated. It's been to our betterment as well.
That's what I'm saying, that we used it way more than we anticipated. I guess we should have heard that before. You know, $150,000 increases over what it would have been. What was the original contract?
The original contract was $359,000.
Well, that's almost 50% more than we originally contracted for, and it looks like we're doing quite a bit more this year.
Right, that was the first time we'd ever been able to have this type of a contract in place to use for additional services. So your point is well taken.
So we will be projecting differently. Next year, we'll be rebidding it
Next year, we're rebidding it, and we'll have to look at it differently.
Okay.
So, thank you, Commissioner Gerard, for your comments. Debbie, can you tell the board, please, do you have a total for how much these additional services have?
Yes.
If you look on the second page of the item in your packet, there's a nice
Oh, there you
table
go.
that Debbie has produced that shows how we got to this situation. When the board voted on the contract back in 2016, it was only to do the standard audit every year. And then as noted, in addition to the standard audit, we've had them do a telecommunications thing, an IT all these other things. that many of which have paid for themselves in savings to the organization. Our phone bill, the expense is down in other areas of our bill because of this work that they've done. We're just you can see in the shaded area that we're at 342 so far, and the board authorization amount is 359. So we're gonna go over once we just do the audit.
And when does the contract end?
It'll be at the conclusion of the
this year.
fiscal 19 audit.
At the end of this year?
Next spring, we'll be doing another bid, and we will anticipate, we will do a better job anticipating that we may use our auditing firm for additional work and come back to the board with a proposal that includes a not-to-exceed amount that allows for additional work.
But that does not answer my question. And my question was, using them for this additional services, how much money has that saved PSTA? I don't see that number in the second page here, or am I just missing it?
No, it's not on there. The telecommunications alone has saved us about, oh my gosh, I would say at least $50,000 a year over the last several years, at least.
Well, I would respectfully request that before this subject matter comes before us again, that we have a very finite number that you can share with the board of what these over and above services have benefited PSTA.
Okay.
You're looking at me as though that's
No,
kind of
I would be
odd
happy
question.
to, no, I will be happy to come up with a savings, dollar savings on the telecommunications over the last couple years, to be able to do that. And of course, the IT penetration tests, that just helps to preserve the vulnerability of our systems.
I understand all of that, but we here are responsible to the public for the dollars being spent, and I'd like to know what the benefit of that is. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that's curious, but let's hear from the other members. Commissioner Eggers.
Well, I think both of you have touched on a really good topic, and that is that we approved a budget to do the required audit, and I'm assuming that this coming audit bidding process will include what they charge for additional services and
That's
an
correct.
estimate from us how many of those services will be needed in that next contract, so that we have a better sense of 359,000 versus 509.
Right.
That's a big variance, so.
Right, and some of the services we've used to date may not be repeated. Others, like IT vulnerability assessments, will be. So we can take those into consideration and allow for a margin for things that we hadn't thought of.
Well, I do think it might be worthwhile, if you don't know what those are gonna be, but you're getting some budgeted in each year, that you bring that to us each year,
think
what you're
that's a great
anticipating doing. But I think your point about getting what those benefits have been, now maybe you can't get into the cybersecurity benefits when it's finished, because we don't want to necessarily air all of that, but it would be nice to know what benefits we're getting from these additional dollars, and I think there's some real ones, and maybe some that make us feel better, and that could be real as well, so. Because this is just not a normal way of doing it, but I appreciate your thoughts.
Anyone else for the good of the whole? Okay, so I guess we need a motion to approve the increase. Do we have the money?
We do.
We have the money.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the additional $150,000 for the financial audit and related services for this fiscal period. However, with the stipulation that in the future, we will be more anticipatory of changes in the original budget.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, and before you do, Commissioner Eggers, I would just like to share with the Finance Committee that the questions that we're bringing up here at the board level, I'm surprised that they weren't brought up on the finance side of it.
They were.
Oh, well, according to Brad, they were, but I guess we didn't get any answers. So please make sure we have the full picture.
Well, this table was a result of the Finance Committee discussion.
Yeah, but it doesn't tell you what the savings are.
No, that, I don't believe that came up, you're right.
Okay, good. Okay, Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, just, do we have to do the additional assessments? We haven't done them yet.
No, we have not.
So, can they be put off another year, and what does that, quote-unquote, cost us to do it? I mean, we're talking about a paratransit assessment.
We have started the paratransit assessment. We have not done I don't believe we've done the other two.
Okay. Well,
If I may, the analysis of the employee benefits and TD late shift, that's a data analysis program they're writing for us. It's about $400 a month to actually implement. The cybersecurity assessments and other services, the $53,200, we have not moved forward with yet.
yeah, for me, I would like to back off of those additional services for the coming year. And then, and all they're really doing is they're doing an assessment. They're not actually, this is not providing changes. They're making suggestions that somebody else, I was presuming, would come in and expend dollars to make the changes.
Right. For instance, on the external penetration testing, they have what we term as professional hackers who try to come into the system to see if it can be reached.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I think there are organizations that implement this kind of thing that also do that as part of their service. I just want to make sure that this kind of thought process is given to that contract. From my perspective, I think those additional contracts need to be held off for the coming year.
Well, if I might speak to that point, Commissioner Eggers, for just a moment, because I just had my briefing yesterday with the county's IT director, given that I sit on that board. This issue here, the last one that we're looking at with regard to cybersecurity, is probably one of the most serious issues that can cause us great harm, financially and otherwise, if we're not paying attention to it. So, given that it's not to be implemented, I think I'm reading this correctly, because it says it's not going to be expended until after the first of the year. Is that right?
That's correct.
And it's in our budget, is it?
Yes, it is.
It is. I would move to take care of it, just so we're comfortable that we're not at risk.
Well, okay.
Yeah, okay, well, yes, we're in a position now to, did you have another question for discussion, Vince? Okay. Oh, you don't have a second? Oh, okay, now you have a second. So can you open the voting board, please? Okay. And that motion passes. Thank you. And now we are on reports and correspondence. Brad?
Thank you. So in your packet is our performance updates that you can see there. And then future meeting subject, as mentioned, next month. And based on just the good discussion we had this morning, I think we'll have another good discussion next month about buses and how they move down the street. So we'll be ordering, we'll be placing before the Finance Committee first, and then based on their recommendation to the full board, a recommendation to purchase 40-foot vehicles for the rapid transit project, and then other replacement vehicles, hopefully a contract for other replacement vehicles as well. I would like just to highlight some great events that we had this week. As as Chair Gerard said, on Monday I was down in St. Petersburg with Chair Gerard and our electric bus as part of an electric vehicle display. I understand that Chair Long expertly drove a Tesla.
I did, it was so exciting. We will someday get
Chair Long to drive the electric bus as well.
I want to do that too, since Commissioner Freed did.
Yes.
Who took the liability for that? Just asking.
That's a good question. I don't know how she finagled that. And then yesterday, we had a really fantastic event that got on the front page of the paper today. Thanks to our Leadership PSTA class, our class of 6 up-and-coming stars within the organization that have a project each year, and they selected a partnership, a great partnership with Feeding Tampa Bay. And thanks to Commissioners Cox and Gracie for joining me yesterday. And this will be the first of 4 mobile food banks that we have at our different transportation centers. We started, this one was here at PSTA. We served more than 300 people came. Most of them came by bus. You know, lots of folks that need food are riding our buses. They may have jobs, but they still need other services. So connecting these food banks to where the transportation is a very positive thing. So I think the other ones are going to be at our other transportation hubs in Clearwater, in St. Pete. So look forward to those. Last on my list of updates, some good news and some other good news. One of the young planners in our at PSTA, who you saw in the Comto video multiple times, Amna Parsons, has announced she's moving across the country to Seattle and joining Sound Transit out there. So it'll be very sad to see her go. She's an up-and-coming star, but I'm very happy that PSTA got her on her way, and now she's moving on and up into another great transit agency. Somebody who's sticking with us, I'm very happy to announce, Heather Sobush, our planning director, has gotten into Leadership APTA. Has been one of the 25 people selected for Leadership APTA, so that's great. Yeah, so she'll be participating with 24 others from around the country in that national leadership program, so that's really great. And that concludes my updates.
Yes.
Can we go back to operating statistics? I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I know the answer to this. But when we look at current month usage, you know, the bus revenue trips are down 50,000 and the other trips are up 40,000. Does that have to do with Pride, or did we actually transport that many people, or what is that? That's a big change in 1 month.
Other bus passenger trips refers to contracted services. So it includes Jolly Trolley, the Looper in St. Pete, mainly those two, and a few other services that we contract out. So the first line, bus revenue trips, is PSTA operated services.
Right.
That's the difference between those 2 lines. And the largely due to the Looper in St. Pete, the ridership is way up on in that category because of the Looper. And ridership for the year on total bus revenue trips is down 1.2%.
Well, St.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, but.
For an overall slight growth in ridership year to date.
Well, okay, so it's not the difference between paying passengers and non-paying passengers?
No. No, and we can take a look at that distinction. It's really between the service that PSTA employees operate and then those that we contract out. That's the difference between those 2 lines.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Edwards, did you have a comment? I thought you
I
had
did,
a light on.
and that's.
You want to hit your
Thank
mic?
you. Yeah, thank you. And that's a good segue into my comment, really. And probably not necessarily looking for an answer today, but certainly would like to understand it a little better. and that is the relationship, the contract that we have with Jolly Trolley, and their ability to expand their service beyond what they do now. They have routes that they're responsible for through the contract, and do we have the ability to give them more routes? Specifically, their niche seems to be tourism-based, like the beach communities from Clearwater Beach all the way down to St. Pete Beach, and yet their service, I think, stops at Sand Key. So I'd just like to understand how they and the future of Jolly Trolley plays into the plans here at PSTA, because it's a really, really good partner. And I just want to make sure, and again, what led me to this was just asking some questions about the 16 trolleys that we're buying, where those trolleys are to be deployed, what service are they hoping to provide with those trolleys, and if it's in areas where the Jolly Trolley might naturally expand, why wouldn't we consider that as an option, being that they, buy their own trolleys? Because I thought originally that 16 new trolleys, that certainly some of those would be being passed through to the Jolly Trolley. Obviously, that's not happening. So I just want to, again, have the conversation perhaps as to how we can expand their footprint, or how we can get a better handle on the future of PSTA in the trolley business themselves versus outside contractor work. So if we could bring that maybe back for a conversation, I think that would be helpful to us as a board and also to our partner, who I think invests quite a bit in our community. So, and really, the only other comment is that as we look at our budget in the next couple of months, I know we're very quick to say that we're an efficiently run organization, but just continue to remember that we have to be as fiscally careful as we can be right now with the funding that we have available to us. We're trying to create a story for the Board of County Commissioners and the MPO that says that additional funding is important. And so how are we going to do that? And so a lot of that's going to be additional scrutiny by our residents on how we operate. So I just want to make sure that we continue to be very careful with the dollars, continue to be careful with the dollars that we have available. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
you're welcome. Brad, do you have future meeting subjects to discuss?
I already covered that.
Okay. And is there other business that any of the board members, other than what Commissioner Eggers has already brought up, that you'd like to see discussed? No? Well then, for the good of the order, we are adjourned.
Exciting.
Well, I don't know what it is.
They asked for us to review the report that went out last week, and I guess
Hey.
it was sent maybe yesterday.
Doing well. How are you?
The funding allocation from the Volkswagen settlement, and asked, can you please, ask Ellen and me, could you please look into whether or not PSTA can use this for electric?
That's always a plus.
Where are you, where at? He may be, it came from someone in your office. I can forward you, yes, I can forward you the email if you like, but I just didn't want to speak out of turn. I'll just let him know that I think you have your questions answered, but that if you need anything, you'll certainly reach out to Alan. You know, he had just been in this conversation.
Your way the other day, whatever.
It was not hot.
Sometimes that's a blessing and a curse, right? Yes, absolutely.